All right. I thought I would explain a position I've taken in terms of my personal activism and focus on politics and so on. I'm Canadian. I'm on the West Coast, and I'm mostly ignore Canadian politics that don't directly affect me. But I've got a sort of reason for that, and that is the typical Canadian is basically a sheep who trusts the Liberals more than the Conservatives, even though the Conservatives have less corruption and better policies for things, including mass immigration and cutting waste and government waste and taxes and opening up the economy so that not free trade, but not neoliberalism, but opening up the economy like through cutting regulations internally to the country, and so on. They're not perfect policies from Pierre Poilievre, but he did better than the others with a moratorium on mass immigration, at least, even if it wasn't mass deportations and like so on. So it would have been a big improvement. Um, However, I've got a plan for this. Um, the first country that is a domino default to the right wing backlash against the leftist totalitarianism was America. And that's the most important because if that country manages to stay right wing for the next 4, 8, 12 years, then the main powerful civilizational force of the world is democratic and responsible with its finances and spending and protects its people from invaders and so on. It should be noted that also the cutting off of immigrants from the south through the land area will help stem a little bit of mass immigration into Canada, sort of, possibly. But America is not enough. We obviously want all of the Atlantic countries and Europe and like Australia, I guess, and Japan to be right wing. Japan probably can manage to stay right wing or become more right wing because they just encountered mass immigration and the immigrants are totally revolting to the Japanese through their sheer disregard of social mores that the Japanese are very strict on. So they're probably going to naturally gravitate towards the right wing without any sort of examples of other countries succeeding as right wing. But America has to be the first, and it is the first, and it's going to stay the first for a while, I think. And then Britain is probably the next one that's going to go seriously right wing. The easiest to domino over to the right wing again. And once Britain falls to the right wing, and everyone's enjoying their life in Britain a lot more, and they get rid of the immigrants, and everyone's doing better, and they're happy, and so on, then the Canadian stubbornness and pro-socialism will be melted more than just the Americans. Because when it's just the Americans, the boomers will scream Trump's Hitler and so on, and ignore the fact that Americans are doing better and way happier in general and so on. But if Britain, the motherland, and the second country as well, becomes right wing and becomes way happier and better off and so on, then the Canadians will look at that and go, oh, it's a pattern and so on. And it's something we can do and actually benefit from because Britain can do it. And we've got a similar parliamentary system and sort of government, and they were doing similar maid and abortion things, and we can fight back against that, and so on. So that's my America, Britain, Canada domino series, and so on. And another thing that makes Canada particularly hard to crack is that about 1/4 of our country works for the government on some level. So the socialism thing really personally benefits that 1/4 to some extent in a way that free market might not necessarily benefit, or might be more risky to them in their minds, and they would rather get a definite paycheck by selling out the country to the state, basically. The nation is sold out to the state. But the thing is, if you have more and more examples of right-wing capitalist, or at least free market, low state intervention, sort of mass deportations, sort of situations, the more examples of that succeeding, then even the sheep of Canada will be unable to resist the temptation to try it out for themselves, basically. So success in other places will drive the Canadians to follow the herd eventually. And the only reason why I would suggest this is because I think the right wing has the right and the correct secret sauce to make our people happy and healthy and wealthy and moral and ethical and have purpose and enjoy life and so on. So success is replicable throughout the West, and I think Canada will follow Britain if Britain goes right wing. After that, France, then maybe Germany, then Spain, or maybe Spain, then Germany, and I don't know where Australia is going to be necessarily, and so on. And after that, I don't know if South America is particularly fixable entirely, but Argentina, well, Argentina and El Salvador or something, I can't remember the place where they jailed all the gangsters and crime dropped like 90%. Plus the rest of those European and North American and Australia and Japan countries going right wing and succeeding at life for their people, might even infect the South Americans or something. And at that point, we've basically won this generation's world war against the globalists. Africa is going to be a shithole no matter what, basically. So it's a lost cause, it's a write-off, might as well just trade with them if we can get our resources cheaply. It's been a shithole for a long time. Cutting off aid might actually make them have to work a bit. So if that manages to happen and so on, then maybe they'll improve their civilization on some level in a noticeable way if they get reasonable trade going and responsibility and financial competence and responsibility and entrepreneurship actually being rewarded. But there's a lot of pushback from superstition and jealousy and envy and so on. So I don't know if Africa has what it takes to rise above what it's now at. But at least North America, Europe, South America, and Australia would be decently well off. And, basically those areas would be a shining beacon to the rest of the world. Hey, look, we've done it. It worked for us. Why don't you do it? So I don't know if those other countries like Africa and South Asia and the Middle East entirely can follow us. but we would be in a lot stronger position to influence them, not through like realpolitik or something, but just through sheer like we did it and it worked for us, and this is our methodology and so on, sort of approach. And it would also, the right wing revolutions would also bring us closer to them in terms of basic morals again, to a certain extent. So there would be less of this whole like Islamist, like the West is decadent, LGBT, weak, disgusting, and so on. And the terrorism and the jihadi and the mass immigration attempts at conquest and so on would probably stop to some extent, and the immigrants that remain here from anywhere of those savage, barbaric third world nations would, it would dry up the terrorism of the people already here that stay here through mass deportations, if they manage to stay through it. So it would be overall a reasonably good system. And the thing about the right wing and the leftists is the leftist kind of says, give me more power to fix what my incompetence has caused. And the right winger says, I'll give you most of the power and also the responsibility. And if you notice, power hungry people don't help anyone else, but responsible people tend to help the needy and the poor a lot. And also, if you noticed, allowing people to have most of the power, other than the state, or at least a lot more power than before when the state is trying to control everything directly, is what freedom is, basically. And so, yeah, it would just be better overall, and those are the kind of reasons for it and so on, and that's my basic domino effect plan to save my country of Canada and care for the rest of the world as well through a replicatable system that when it's implemented in a specific country or a single country, it works, and you just copy and paste it to the next country to some extent, or at least some variation similar to it on some level, in a way that is actually understandable to the other country. So I'm not saying it's like you can replicate US or American or British or Canadian right-wing democracy or republic in Africa, but they might pick something that has some of the elements more so than before and actually succeed more and so on in increments and actually improve as a civilization. So that's my way of caring for the West and my own people and my own country and my own province and my own city and so on. And it's my way of saying this is the path to helping the rest of the world out as well, not mass immigration. And it starts with dominoes. And basically the difference between this and communists and the domino theory of communism and the fears of it is that our version doesn't require mass genocides to control the situation once we get in power. Our version works by keeping in power, by making people's lives actually better than they were under the leftists, by convincing people to support our cause because our people doing this, or the people that we follow doing this, or the people that we're neighbors of doing this and getting way better lives out of it, speaks for itself. So it's like a containment and rollback of the communism that we faced so far.